Hey guys, Bugcat7 here. Okay, it is Friday, December 29th, 2023, and I'd like to welcome you to the Stonewall Research 2 channel here on YouTube. Thank you very much, I really do appreciate it. And Happy New Year, everybody. Have a healthy and Happy New Year. Lots of love, peace to everybody. That's most important in these years to come, with all the sort of violence that goes on around the world that quite frankly disgusts me, but who am I? But in any case, I wanted to read this very, very interesting article about an account of a race of giant Eskimos, believe it or not. My idea, I think, along with a lot of other people's idea about these Eskimo people. I remember seeing films about it in school when I was a kid and everything, and how these Eskimo people lived up there in Alaska, because it's one of the states of the United States. And when I was a kid, it was a rather new state. I think statehood in 59, I believe. It was bought in the 1860s from Russia, and it didn't become a territory until 1911 or 1912, something like that. And this account is from the Los Angeles Herald, February 1907. And it was a U.S. Navy ensign's account of visiting Alaska there. Of course, it was going to be visited by the Navy. At that time, it was probably the Great White Fleet that was going around the world there. It was showing off our naval power. I think it was President McKinley at the time. It was sent the Great White Fleet around the world to sort of show off the U.S.'s naval power with these great steel warships painted white. So it was the Great White Fleet. But in any case, this is an account from a naval ensign from Alaska, and a number of things really interest me about this article. And if you're not familiar with my other channel, the Stonewall Research channel, my original channel, other channel here on YouTube, I have a playlist of the giants accounts, newspaper accounts, other accounts of the giant humanoids from the past, these skeletal remains uncovered and recovered by various people at various times. But this account is from the 20th century, but I already covered this in a playlist here, 45 videos on my other channel in a playlist, where you can pretty much go and see the accounts of the giants, which were pretty much in every single state in the United States, either stories or actual accounts, newspaper accounts. I cover everything through this, and I covered Alaska too, if you didn't know. And here's from my other channel with the metal atlatls, these type of sling spears that they used in the Americas at the time, but these ones were made out of metal. So they found this, and mounds and stone cairns. There's some stonework right there in the picture here that is not attributable to settlers or colonists. That's only on the East Coast. If there's any sort of stone walls built on the East Coast, well, it's obviously settlers and colonists. Anywhere else, it could be Aboriginal stonework or mystery stonework, like in California there with the mystery walls there. Who built them? They don't know, but it certainly wasn't colonists or settlers. But it has to be in the Northeast, no matter what, even though it doesn't make a lot of sense, some of these walls. But in any case, they have mounds up there in Alaska too, not just in the lower 48. Maybe you thought that, but if you want to know more about it, you can go to my playlist there on my other channel and check it out. That's what you got to do. So, in any case, let's take a look at this article. It's on Chris Leslie's Greater Ancestors site here. And, I covered a lot of the articles from this site thanks to Chris Leslie, and who, compiled all of these newspaper accounts and clippings and stuff. We're lucky to have these, especially from some of these early years of the 20th century, like this one, for example. But again, a number of things interest me, things that I've already talked about many times before, about these giant humanoids and their skulls and, their teeth, etc., things like that. But this is accounts from the 20th century of people who were living there in Alaska. So evidently there's more types of Eskimos than we're aware of, apparently, according to this article here from early 20th century, 1907. So let me read it to you, because some interesting points in here, and I didn't cover this I just had time constraints. I couldn't cover. Many of these states had 30, 40, 50 accounts. I just couldn't cover everything. I just took the choice ones in a lot of cases. So anyway, let's take a look at this thing here. I'll read it to you. It's in tiny, tiny letters here, and I'm getting kind of old, folks. But let me try to read it to you. He has it printed up there. I like reading from the actual article. I like the way they do this stylized eye in front of it at that time. Really nice. It is a popular belief that the Eskimo or Esquimaux, whichever you please, are Indians, but it is quite as likely that they are Mongolians. Ensign Roger Wells, U.S. Navy, who has recently visited a great many news facts which are of interest, and from his report, the following article has been condensed. 3 types are observable among the Eskimo of Alaska. First are the tall, cadaverous natives on Kotzebue Sound who live on fish, ptarmigans, and marmots. They always look hungry, and in fact, they always are. These are tall, zombie-looking guys, but, lean and hungry and all that kind of stuff, but not quite giants. And this is what's also interesting about this particular article here, or this account, is that it distinguishes between tall and giant, see? So there's a distinction made there with comparison of the peoples in the same general, geography. So that's important to note here, because this particular distinction obviously, suggests someone, especially the naysayers, going to say, they're exaggerating or whatever it is. So this is early 20th century, U.S. naval personnel account, and seems fairly credible to me. So and like David Paulides, often you say whatever the first accounts were in the news were probably the most accurate. Then afterwards they start to take on more fantastic elements. Well, let me read the rest of the article for you. So then there is, okay, so that was the first type, the cadaverous, hungry, lean type, tall ones, right? So now here's about the Nooatoks, this giant race that the article here on Chris Leslie's site is talking about. And it interests me because there's a clear distinction of these particular Eskimos, quote unquote, than the other ones, and it's interesting what's said about them. Then there is the tall, strongly knit type of Nooatoks, a gigantic race, highlighted here in red, of a splendid physique that would be remarkable in any part of the world. So they're giant with remarkable physiques, okay? Like, built like Hercules, okay? Perfect for lifting heavy stuff. Rugged as the mountains among which they live, vigorous and courageous, they stop at nothing but the impossible to accomplish a desired end. Their food supply is the reindeer, mountain sheep, ptarmigans, and fish. interesting what they say about them here: vigorous and courageous, and stop at nothing but the impossible to accomplish a desired end. So rugged, and they live in the mountains. Okay, how many accounts, especially the accounts of the Basque gentile race of giants who lived in the mountainous areas? Often these accounts of giants from so-called myths of the past, where the giants lived in the mountainous regions, were very common. So here we have an actual account of actual giant peoples living in the mountains in Alaska, who are considered quote-unquote Eskimos. But distinctions are made here that clearly show that the person is coming from an intelligent viewpoint. So the third type is the short, stumpy one, probably that of the old Eskimo before the admixture with southern tribes, now found on the Arctic coast. Okay, so this is the ones that we're familiar with, at least I am anyway. I didn't know about any of these other Eskimos or zombie ones and giant ones. But these are the ones that I think we're all most familiar with, who live on the coast and, hunt seal and whale and all kind of other stuff. So, okay, so they're short and stumpy, and not with the admixture of these other southern tribes, apparently, live in the mountains and whatnot, and giant. And again, rules in the ancient past of, commingling between tribes or classes of peoples living together. The Eskimo have coarse black hair, some with a tinge of brown. Men have the crown of the head closely cropped so that reindeer may not see the waving locks when the hunter creeps behind bunch grass. They have black eyes and high cheekbones. The bones of the face are better protected from the severity of the climate by a thicker covering of the flesh than southern races. Generally, their beard is very scant, and most of them devote otherwise idle hours to pulling out the hairs. All have good teeth, but they are subjected to severe usages. So this is a point that interests me a lot, because often these giant skulls, these giant skeletons and the giant skulls, we found with these perfect teeth. The teeth were perfect, yet they had this wear on the side or in the front. There's wear in different places showing some activity. So listen to what's said about this. These Eskimo quote-unquote people is generalizing here, so I'm not sure who he's talking about exactly, unless they all practice these things, which is quite possible, because common to do things, in a similar way, if that's a process and procedure. Okay, so listen to what is said over here. So, all have good teeth, but they are subjected to severe usage, being used for pincers, vices, and fluting machines. The teeth are also employed in drawing bolts, untying knots, holding the mouthpiece of a drill, shaping boot soles, stretching and tanning skins. When they become uneven from hard usage, they are leveled off with a file or a whetstone. That solves that problem pretty well. Right? So often these people, these skulls from ancient times, were found with these perfect teeth, which experts often said, well, they must have been vegetarians. That was the only way in their minds, if they were vegetarians. Yet these people were eating deer meat, reindeer, mountain sheep, ptarmigans, and fish. So you could almost bet that the primary source in their diet was the fish, because that's the most bountiful and not to be depleted readily, especially in your immediate area. You don't want to do something like that. So, as I said, less of the sort of terrestrial animal meat was consumed, and more of the fish, and perhaps even, fowl, which is a less sort of sinewy kind of meat, that have these sort of tough fibers like other meat, like, cow, that we're familiar with today. You can get a piece of meat, it's like leather, right? So you can get some tough chicken sometimes, but it doesn't have a tendency to get stuck in your teeth very much, but the red meat does, right? So anyway, they were eating a lot of fish back then, you can be assured of that. And, whatever vegetables they were eating and other things that might mitigate any sort of, tooth decay, some other plants, medicinal plants, herbs that they knew about. Those things are passed on from thousands of years ago. My own great-grandmother was an expert at that, even though they had no formal education, lived in the Transylvanian mountains in Hungary. No doctors around or anything like that. You had to know a lot of stuff. Well, she knew a lot about all the stuff. When she came to the United States, she was able to identify similar plants. They weren't exactly the same, but she recognized the leaf patterns and sort of similarities to it and similar properties that she was aware of. So she taught my grandmother some of that stuff. My grandmother taught me a little bit about it, but not a lot, unfortunately, because, well, whatever. So anyway, let's read more about this here. Okay, so the teeth were leveled off with a whetstone or a file or whatever to even them out after they wore them down a bit. But again, a lot of these skulls were found with this wear, yet perfect teeth. Okay, how does that work out? But it did. At any time from 16 to 22 years of age, the men have their lower lips pierced under each corner of the mouth for labrets or plugs. When the incision is first made, sharp-pointed pieces of ivory are put in. After the wound heals, the hole is gradually stretched to half an inch in diameter. Some of the poorer natives wear labrets made from cannel coal, ivory, and glass stoppers obtained from ships, which they shape for the purpose. All who can obtain them have agate ones. Some of the girls have their ears pierced just back of the lobe, where it is thinnest. They wear ivory earrings, some which are carved with plain figures, while others have a setting of turquoise. Some of them have a string of beads extending from one earring to the other, suspended under the throat. Tattooing the chin among the women is general, and it is kept up, so they say, because it has always been the custom. At the age of 6, one narrow perpendicular line is drawn down the center of the chin, powdered charcoal being used in coloring. At about 12 years of age, the line is broadened to half an inch and a narrow line drawn parallel to it on each side. Clothing for men consists of knee breeches belted at the loins, a loose-fitting coat trimmed around the bottom, and the hood with a wolf or wolverine or blending of both. A pair of stockings and a short-legged pair of boots with sealskin soles. In winter, 2 suits are worn, the inner suit with the hair next to the body and the other with the hair turned out. They are intelligent beyond what may be expected and are quick in providing ways and means in cases of emergency. Some of them carve with a knife on pipe stems or drill bows made of mastodon or walrus ivory. Pictures illustrating events in the life of the artist, tribal history, or festal occasions. There are instances where they have communicated with each other by means of pictures carved on wood or ivory. In their drawings, they have no idea of the perspective, and instead of drawing from nature, they are more apt to incline to the grotesque and hideous, just as the fancy may seize them. Our pictures are unintelligible to them, unless they are distinctly ludicrous. Children are given from 2 to 6 names, but none of them are those born by the father or mother, but are those of the ancestors or respected relatives. The literal meaning of the names are stone, foxes, or different kins, seals of all varieties and sizes, birds, animals, parts of animals, of birds, of fishes, or of the body, sections of the country, winds, tides, motion fast or slow, decorative articles, and names compounded in an expressive way as Amak Tigara, the she-wolf of the Tagaras. The Eskimo are, like most uncivilized people, cruel to the aged and infirm, hastening their deaths if possible, and sometimes killing them outright. Holy cow. Really, they are also rather gloomily inclined, being superstitious to a remarkable degree, but they have their games, such as they are. Festival occasions are early in December when they have a kind of harvest home, entertainments being given every day by each hut in succession, with an evening dance in the assembly house. A day will be devoted to whales, another to reindeer, others to seal, their whaleboats, sleds, husbands, sweethearts, and wives. This festival is kept up until the whole program is completed or someone dies through exhaustion in dances of endurance. The next is that of good cheer in June, when they quit whaling and exchange presents, give scraps to the poor, and toss each other up in blankets. Another reason of gaiety is when representatives of, this interests me right here, representatives of different tribes meet at the summer rendezvous for the purpose of exchanging commodities. Dancing, foot races, and wrestling matches are indulged in. Both sexes join in games of polo, football, and tag. In summer, girls toss sandstone balls with their hands, 2 balls with one hand, or 3 balls with both hands. Maybe juggling, they're trying to say. In winter, they toss an ice ball with their feet. Sounds like hacky sack to me, keeping it from touching the ground for hours at a time. Sometimes they toss it from one to another. Okay, so yeah, sounds like hacky sack to me with ice balls. Okay, up there in Alaska. So, in any case, this is just a general description after this. But a more, this is sort of superficial, although, you think there's a lot of details given here, but not to the degree that a study would merit or anything like that. So, it's just a sort of generalizations of their, their attire, their habits, or whatever they are, that they could assume from a short visit, I'm sure. But it's interesting about this giant race, because there's not a lot of accounts from the Americas of these giant races. Well, down there in Patagonia with Coptois, the 2-headed giant, with the Spaniards there killing them, the giants on the beach there and executing them all, and the Patagonia big feet, right? So now it's Argentina, right? So they got rid of that Patagonia stuff. They don't want to know about the big feet that they executed all of these people. Just, the giant genocide went up into, what we can see into historical times, it just, immediately all these people caused great fear. Later in the Victorian times, it's sort of from an entertainment aspect, curiosity aspect, whereas before that, these people in historical times, especially in the Americas, all these accounts of these great chieftains, including here on Long Island. When Verrazano got here to Long Island, the first thing he did when he invited these people on board was notice that they were larger than he expected. And that's another thing. It's just, I learned in school, and certainly a lot of people learned in school, that the native peoples of the Americas are sort of short in stature. Well, maybe that's true for the Central Americans and other tribes, maybe, and mainland, United States, or even in Canada, whatever, that might be true. Because Cabeza de Vaca gave accounts of little primitive men and big giant men with big giant bows and arrows. So, these are the accounts that we're talking about, which may be subject to, exaggeration, and the people who are skeptics about the whole giant narrative and everything. These are the kind of things they argue against many, many times. But this, in 20th century here, giving us sort of a believable account of the three types of Eskimo people, or three types of people who are inhabiting these areas there in Alaska before it was even a territory. It's probably more like the wild, wild west there for until 1911, when it became an official territory. It wasn't a state until '59, but a few years before I was born. So in any case, here's and then on my other channel, also in the international accounts of the giants, which I never got to put in a playlist. I wish I would have. I wanted to do that. I didn't do it. But it's there, the account in Greenland, where actual, I think 20th century accounts or late 19th century accounts of these giant peoples being in Greenland. So again, these accounts, a few scan accounts, and but this one being from 1907 in the Los Angeles Herald there, from this ensign, U.S. Navy ensign. Sounds like a believable account. So here you have accounts of giant peoples living in the mountains in the Alaska territory there. And my idea of the Eskimos with the third type that he named there, the one we're most familiar with, the living on the coast, hunting whale and seal and all that kind of stuff, and deer, whatever there. Okay, mostly from the ocean there. That's good teeth, that anything comes out of the water does not have the consistency of land, terrestrial animal meat, mammal meat. So, and in any case, whatever other practices they had that we don't know about. But many things interest me about this article here. It's just the account in, relatively modern times, 20th century, of these giant peoples, and the distinction between the tall, zombie-like people from that Kotzebue Sound area there, with these other giant ones, distinct from the tall zombie ones, with the magnificent physiques and everything like that, right? Living in the mountains and knowing full well about many of the, especially in Europe, of accounts of the giants living in a mountainous region from many mythologies of the European countries. So, here we have, 20th century account of actual giants living in actual mountains. So, it's just an affirmation of, what the actual account of the giants is, being accurate. So, whoever the skeptics are, they certainly don't focus on any of these sorts of things, whatever. But, again, it's not scientific or whatever, official or whatever. So, you could say that about the Bureau of Ethnology from the Smithsonian and all the, the reports that they put out, which account for all of these things. And, and even in some of these accounts, Alice Herdliska is involved in some of these other accounts in Alaska here. I may go over more of these because I had to skip a lot of these because just for brevity sake, with the going state by state on my other channel. But very interesting things, because we heard of in the accounts about the wear on the giant skulls, the perfect teeth there. And, I keep on talking about the activity. The teeth serve as a tool in this case. Named many ways they use their teeth and the wear to them in this article here. And whatever happened to these people, they were just assimilated, and nobody ever talks about it. It's just, nobody wants to talk about it. If they ever refer to them, they're just, sort of average sized people, really, compared to people who are around today. But to see, that's an unfair comparison anyway. The people in 1800, first of all, what you're not taught about in school is that the Plains Indians in the U.S. here were among the tallest people in the world in 1800 when they actually did some kind of official study of this. Okay, according to the scientists who handle growth and height science and history. Okay, so the Plains Indians were among the tallest people in the world. Well, when did you learn that in school? I didn't learn that in school. So, but that's mainstream accounting of it. And the European people at the same time were among the shortest people in the world because they were like 5'3" to 5'5". English, Dutch, German were all that size. What they don't tell you is that people from Finland and stuff were larger in size, and nobody ever talked about the Frisians either. It's, because it's left out of the conversation until modern times, that on purpose. Okay, so in any case, guys, I just found it interesting of a 20th century account by this U.S. ensign of these giant people with remarkable physiques, living in the mountains, and who are vigorous and courageous and stop at nothing but the impossible to accomplish a desired end. Okay, so this is sort of a description of the accounts of many of the giants in mythology and folklore and in actuality, like the Adena people, who were the prestigious people of their time. And obviously, when the Iroquois refer to the big man, it's not a figurative big man, it's a literal big man, because they are the Hopewell. It's just as simple as that. Nobody wants to say any of these things. It really is. It's just the whole history is fudged and has to be based on a bunch of made-up stories from people who telling other people, especially the native peoples, what their history is. But fortunately there are many native peoples who don't fall for that crap. So in any case, this is just among the accounts of giant native peoples in historical times, and there were many accounts of these giants, including here on Long Island. The natives that Verrazano met at here on Long Island must have been the descendants of King Mangatuxi, the chief of the Montauk tribe here on Long Island, which everybody knows the Montauk Indian tribe out here on Long Island. And all his sons were the ones who were the chiefs of the other tribes here on Long Island, his descendants and whatnot. And he was a person of giant stature, who was a vigorous defender. So another one of these hybrids or ruling class of these large, humanoid people. Again, just suggests of that whole dynamic going on. But that's what Verrazano encountered when he came here to Long Island. Not only that they were taller, but they were larger. That's what surprised him. Okay, and then they were likened to a white as well. And, that's what he said. That's his comment, actual comment. So, and that they were beautiful, he also said. They had, like, funky haircuts, and they adorned themselves. They were very vain, or interested in adorning themselves. So, in any case, guys, that's article I just wanted to read to you because it had all these elements in there that I often talk about, and we've already talked about in the videos on my other channel about the giants. And here's accounts of them in the 20th century of actual encounters with giant peoples, what they consider primitive peoples, but even though they also credit them with being, rather intelligent. So, in any case, I thought that was interesting. I just thought it was necessary to talk about this. I found many things of that article very interesting, like 3 different types of Eskimo, okay, a giant one that live in the mountains, and tall zombie ones. Very interesting. So, any case, guys, hope you enjoyed that, and have a happy new year. Perhaps we'll cover more of these other stories of the accounts of the giants that I was not able to get to in my series of videos on this original Stonewall Research channel. So, any case, guys, happy new year, and Bugcat7 signing out. Peace.